please give a very warm 203 welcome to our keynote speaker, Mr. Shekhawat.
A recitation of a bio like that always essentially manages to condense 20 years or so of your life into a few minutes. So it's exhausting to listen to, even for me. So I don't know what effect it's having on you guys, but thanks for listening. For the time that we have together, I think the thing that will be most useful maybe for you guys, certainly for me, will be if we can manage to make this more interactive than just a speech from me. I think you'll probably find that more useful. So let me start, and the way we can do it is I'll tell you a little bit about my story and the journey, and wherever you guys want to hook on to it or something strikes you as interesting, raise your hand and offer up a comment or ask a question or disagree, and that's good too, because that's always good practice for building a business. You'll find lots of points of disagreement here. So I want to establish my Naperville credentials first, and it may actually be better than some of you guys. So just a quick show of hands of the high schoolers, who was actually born in Naperville? So approximately half of you guys, a little bit less than half. So I have two boys. One of them is a high schooler, who's now, as Julie said, in 9th grade. I moved to the city, so he's completing his high school in the lab school and is heading to NYU. But my son was born here, the older one was born here, and you guys know the Riverwalk. Have you been to that little rotunda type setting with all the names around it? And, when that was being built, they were soliciting donations, and they were selling those bricks for $300 a brick. You could pay $300 to help build the Riverwalk and stick somebody's name on it. I didn't have $300, but I did have $100 back then. And this is a pre-entrepreneurship day, so I managed to buy one line to put Samir Shekhawat's name on one of those bricks. And when I come back, there's a nice chance to take a look at it. The second son was 4 years younger. They were both born in Edward here, by the way. He was as he was growing up. That mural that is the big city mural that's painted next to, I think it's the Gap store, the little alleyway there. You guys know that, right? The painter was about halfway through that mural, and he saw me walking by, and he says, "You have any kids?" And I said, "Yes." So he said, "Well, look at this wall. It's all white. We need some color on this wall. So would you mind bringing one of your sons and dressing him up in native garb, basically counted as some sort of an Indian get up here." So I did that. So I brought these two boys, and now they're both painted on that wall. So my son and his buddy, they're painted there, holding a U.S. flag and an American flag. So those are my Naperville credentials. Field Glass was started in Naperville, off of Deal Road. I took a small office there, and I began it, much the way that you guys might have begun your projects here, with just an idea and attempting to look for small amounts of money, trying to persuade people to join you, all of the things that entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurship tends to be a blood sport. Right? It's a full contact sport. You have to be all in or don't do it. Right? That's just the way it works. Or you will get steamrolled over by somebody who does treat it that way. So you've got to do it in the area that you have some passion for. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I started the firm there, and as it grew, extended into the Fifth Avenue train station. So if you guys go there and take the train, Field Glass has a lot of space there. That's our development office. And as it grew further, I shifted the headquarters to the city because it was easier to access for customers and it brought us a bigger pool of employees. And that's where we are now. So we have about 60,000 square feet of downtown headquarters space right across from the French Market by the Louis train station. And it's a beautiful space that after 12 years or so of building it, we got to really design a space that spoke to us and reflected our values. So there's that. We have a large office in London, and we have a development center in India, and an office in Australia. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it really came up a little bit at the time. It all began right here in Naperville. just coming this morning from the Chicago Venture Capital Summit, which is a big deal now for the city of Chicago. There's 200 or 300, there's actually about 400 people, half of them are VCs from across the country. The mayor just kicked it off and essentially introduced Green Glass as one of the big tech successes in the city of Chicago. The sale that took place created what is, sometimes used to be called a unicorn. You guys are familiar with that term. I'm just happy to say that journey began from here. And I suspect that it will, hopefully some of you will go on to start interesting companies and come back and talk about it. I want to shift gears a little bit to, firstly, let me take a pulse check here. You guys okay? And just make sure we start to engage and ask questions because if not, then I'm going to start calling you guys out a bunch of good ideas. The act of starting a company begins with the act of choosing a problem you want to solve. Right? And I took a glance at some of the business plans and the ideas people have been all very interesting. But I wonder if you all thought about what problem you're actually solving, right? And it begins with a problem. It doesn't begin with an idea. An idea is just something that we happen to think of because the neurons fire in our brain, and we like car washes, or we like decals, or we like socks, or we want to talk about the sock idea a little bit. And so we do that thing, and that's great at the very early level that you guys are doing this at. And the reason it's great is because it actually allows you to work through the mechanics and execution elements of what it takes to start a company. The basic blocking and tackling, right? Writing the plan, coming up with the financials, persuading somebody to buy your stuff, etc. But as you get bigger, you will be likely selling, to businesses. You may sell to consumers. But if you really want the company to scale, one of the ways to do it is to sell to businesses. And there you are forced to choose a problem. So here, let me lay out the three components of a company conceptually. Consists of the problem, right? The first is the problem, the second is the set of people you'll have, and then the third is the money, so the funding. So it's choosing the right problem, bringing together the right talent, and then pulling the financial resources together. By problem, I really mean finding in your space, let's say like finance or human resources, procurement, the big functions that a company has. Finding a potential buyer who relates to your problem is going to be very central, right, to what you do. And if it's not in someone's top 2 or 3 lists of problems that they wish to solve, they'll just never get to it, right? The company will at that point be destined to go sideways. But if you can hook up to one of those things in your area of interest, you'll suddenly find that these people want to step up and help you start designing a solution. And the holy grail for an entrepreneur is to be able to engage with your future buyers at that level where they want to help you design a solution to their problem, right? In other words, they've given you the gift of their problem. And that's how you want to think about it. So the first takeaway that you want to keep in mind is find a problem that interests you and then dig into it. Read about it, talk about it, understand it, but frame it as a problem. And for example, I'll just pick the car wash idea. Who are the car wash guys? Yeah. Okay, so why did you guys decide to do a car wash?
It was an idea that we had. We chose it because when we ran surveys at the school, we were people the most. Also, what we really wanted to do was a service also. And what really helped is that we did a non-for-profit thing.
So that's all very good. I like the first part of what you said about the survey, because that starts to get at the idea of a problem. So for instance, if there's a place that, where it's all public transport and nobody's driving, maybe you don't want a car wash there. Or if there's a, effective car wash nearby, maybe you don't want that there either. So just, being able to establish the need so that you have, you don't have, you're not going to be killed off by the competition, or the demand is not there. In this case, that starts to get at what the basics of what I'm saying about finding the problem would be. And there'd be other examples. Who are the sock people? Why'd you guys do a sock business?
Well, for us, we figured, I played sports at Central, and one of the things was with the uniform, they would give you all the equipment, and then one of the things that they didn't provide for you was socks, so we thought we could come in there and give everyone an option that was an NCHS themed pair of socks. So
That's an interesting approach. The reason I brought that up is I actually encountered 2 sock companies recently. So the first one, which I liked less, was actually started by some Kellogg entrepreneurs. And I found out because I did a talk to the Kellogg entrepreneurship community a couple of weeks back, and in the little goodie bag like this one that they give the speakers, there's a pair of socks. I'm always happy with a pair of socks. So I went to their website, and the firm is, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it was not an inspiring website. The selection was mediocre. There weren't things that you couldn't get elsewhere. And frankly, when you buy socks, there's a lot of staple socks, and then there might be some specialty socks like you're talking about. But then there's another little firm called Sock 101, sock101.com. You guys can look it up. I met that entrepreneur on a trip, on the first tech trip that our community made to Cuba in December. And he was carrying around a stack of his socks, and he looked at people that appeared to have mildly interesting socks. He was just handing us pairs of socks. So I go back and look at his site. It's full of really interesting socks, and I end up buying 10 pairs. And there's a pirate sock, and there's a sock for autism that looks like colorful jigsaw puzzles, and there were themes. And so what he had done right, which I think is what you have actually done with your idea, you guys have done with your idea, is hook it up to a theme. So people who relate to, say, pirates, whoever those are, that's not one of them, because I bought that pair of socks. There was the pink ribbon things for breast cancer, so you kind of use. And that's how you actually find markets that might want to, wear that as a personal branding element, a personal statement. So it sounds like it was good. So let me move on from the problem. Let's say you've identified a problem, you get passionate about it, you put it on. The second thing you'll need to put together is your team, right? Who's going to be on this team? And how do you persuade somebody to leave their gainful employment or whatever they're doing and come join you on this crazy journey that you're about to embark on? Because that's what entrepreneurship is. You have to be a little bit crazy, actually. And there, your first hire has to be someone who can build your product or service, like whoever that is. If you're building software like we did, and I'm not a skilled software developer. I don't particularly like frankly computers that much. The software company. But I am able to hire people who do. So you're going to round out your team with people who are extremely skilled at the things that you don't want to do or are not particularly good at, right? And one of the things you have to be very good at is at attracting that talent. And you do it by really treating them as peers. They are your peers, right? They are your peers. You might be in a sense, the boss, which is a term I hate, by the way. The CEO is first among, equals for certain things, but not for other things. And you bring in people that actually frighten you with how good they are at what they do. And if you can really celebrate how good they are and what they do and be their cheerleaders as they join you in this journey, you are halfway to the finish line already in the act of building out a team. And then make sure they hire in the same way, etc., so that the collection of people you have are excellent at what they do, right? And your job as a founder or CEO is to make sure you embody that spirit as the firm grows and are constantly vigilant about it. That's on the people side. The third, of course, is the money. Right? At some point, you've got to figure out how to fund this thing. And the good news here is that there's actually an enormous amount of capital out there sitting on the sidelines waiting to be put to work. There's plenty of money out there. The less good news is it's not running to find you. Right? That's the way money works. It sits. It wants to be found. You guys are coming up to prom night. My loose example today would be you've got to step out, just like I think school boys would have to do. And excuse my example, I have a high schooler here, so this is certain anxieties that relate to the upcoming month or so of his life. But that's what money does. You have to make a good case for why it should step up and end up in your company as opposed to somewhere else. And the mistake that entrepreneurs make is they don't learn how to speak the language of the investor. They speak their own language. And the language of the investor is, how much do you want? When will you be break even? Right? And who is going to buy this company and how soon? In other words, I'm investing in you not for the joy that you find in building your firm, right? As much as I'm happy for you to speak to you as an investor now. But I want to know what my expected return might be, where my money is being put at risk, and what are my alternatives. And as a founder, the thing that you can really bring to the table is a good team, the right problem, and a well thought out business plan with an exit plan. Right? And so, on the field glass side, it took many, many years to do this, and lots of fits and starts, but eventually there was, in fact, an exit to SAP, which was a German software company. And the reason that exit was effective is that we were able to position it as exactly the right fit for something missing in their product, their roadmaps. And that's what would happen to you guys too. Now, if you build, the difference between an entrepreneur and someone who is a small business operator, right? And these are all choices that you will make. It'll be lifestyle choices or other choices. The difference is that a small business owner, like lots of the businesses you see in and around Naperville, the restaurants and the salons and so on, is that they're not ever intending to scale the business. Their intent is to have a business that supports a lifestyle. And that's a very personal choice. The world is full of such businesses. They're extremely necessary. And some, by definition, serve a local need, and they will never scale. Right? But entrepreneurship, should you choose to sign up for that, is all about scaling. It's all about growing your business beyond its geographical footprint and the limitations of the local customer base. And that's when it becomes, real fun. And, if you guys choose to go down that path, it's a life choice you will make. You will literally reprogram how you think about things. You will stop seeing the world as a collection of obstacles. You'll start to see it as a collection of opportunities. Right? And even in that one statement, you will shift your mindset to being one of feeling put upon by the trials and tribulations of life to feeling like I'm in charge here. But you might be dead broke, as all of us are when we start, but you can still feel in charge. And that's the greatest gift that entrepreneurship, which is available freely to anyone, can give you. Right? So let me pause there because we can take it in many directions and just maybe open it up to comments or questions or whatever's on you guys' mind. Yes, sir.
So how did you get the money to grow your business then in the beginning?
So in the beginning, and let me just tell you, I literally had no money. Right, my first son had just been born, and I had maybe about 5 or 6 months of cash over to my name, and for some reason we had 2 student debts and a mortgage, which was an interesting choice I made at that time. But then I made a decision that between some other borrowings and things, I could probably extend it to a year, so I had a year of life. And my decision was, it created an urgency. And as an entrepreneur, you need ways to create urgency. And there's nothing like knowing you're going to run out of money to create urgency. And like I said earlier, the 3 components of a business, having a great idea, which really means a great problem you're solving. If you have that, you can then attract the talent and the money. That's what it takes. And that's what I built out. So, this was quite a few years ago, but I had a business plan on PowerPoint slides that consisted of 15 PowerPoint slides. But I had a good explanation and a big problem. So I guess that's the other insight. Money will follow a big problem. Money will generally not follow a small problem. Because a big problem, gives you room to make mistakes, of which there will be plenty. And so the problem we were solving is we had decided that a third or 40% of the world's workforce was actually a contract workforce. They were not employees. And there's a set of problems around that we wanted to solve. It just happened to be a big global problem. And VCs like big global problems. But investors like big global problems. Good question. What else? Thoughts? Car wash lady?
I don't know. Maybe like, what would be your biggest tip to getting a business off the ground?
Getting a business off the ground.
Yeah.
I've got a few tips, mostly from things I've done wrong about half the time. The biggest tip, so here's the starting tip. Do something only in an area that you truly are passionate about. That is the biggest tip I can give you if I only have to give you one tip, but I got a couple more. If you are not passionate about it, when the days get dark, and they will, right, they will, and you're reaching deep inside yourself for reserves, why am I doing this again? And why did I decide to do this? You will wish that it was an area that you're excited about. And that's the greatest thing. Don't do it just because it sounds like a good idea. And when you're passionate about something, you will study it. You'll become a student of that space. You'll ask questions. And I'll tell you one, here's my second tip. How do you know when it's the right time? Maybe, let's say that's another question you care about. How do you know it's the right time? It's when you start obsessing about that thing you're passionate about, when you wake up at 2 a.m. thinking about it. You know, it's a form of love, actually. It's literally like being in love, except with a non-human, in this case, with an idea. But that's what ideas are. An idea that you're that passionate about, I'm telling you, it creates a force in you that is unstoppable. I mean, you will not be stoppable if you feel like that about something. And the great entrepreneurs, and by this, the broadest definition of entrepreneur, I'll get to one second. The broadest definition would include people like Martin Luther King or Mandela or Gandhi, etc., who really looked at the world and said, I don't like what I see in this area, and I'm going to do something about it. And at its heart, that's what entrepreneurship is. So find your passion. I've forgotten the other two tips, but I'll get to them. Yes.
So of all the things you just described, like, you know, like wake up at like 2 and just think about it.
That's not a recommendation, but that's just what happened.
Did you
Oh,
do
yes.
that? You had ideas and things like that?
I had something I wanted to do, and I was employed at that time at McKinsey. And I was having, I was having a moment, which is a polite way of saying I was having an existential crisis, which you should get to, by the way, quickly. Get a couple of them out of the way. It's good. It really is good, because it forces you to ask yourself, who am I, what's important to me, and so on. I'll just tell you, at my employment, I was sitting with a large company CEO consulting with him, and he's listening to me, and I'm like, what the hell are you listening to me? I'm 2 years out of school, I don't really know that much about your sector. And it occurred to me, he's not really listening to me, he's listening to the firm called McKinsey, of which I happen to be a representative. Now, people would have reacted to that differently. Some are like, cool, they like McKinsey, and that's fine too. My reaction was different. I went into a tailspin, actually, and I decided that the question really became, do you want to be part of someone else's story, or do you want to write your own story? I choose the side of writing my own story. Yes, sir. Back.
At what point in your life did you know that you made it? Like, what was your definition of success?
That's a very good question. You never make it. You never make it. There is a risk to ever thinking of it that way, by the way. But you do end up in a place that is where safety starts to reveal itself in certain ways. And what do you mean by safety? So the first safety, milestone you hit is a financial safety where you can actually, exhale in a sense and say, okay, I don't have to buy the baby's diapers off the cheap shelves. I can actually get something quality, and then I can, I've got a little set aside and so on. So there is that, and you can actually feel the knots loosening in you. But to me, okay, I'll tell you when you know you've made it. You made it when one day you wake up and you say, this is the thing I want to do. this is what I want to do. Not necessarily the particular company, but the act. So in my case, I cast it as you're having impact through creation. And entrepreneurs are all artists. You guys, everything that you've done here can easily be cast as art with a set of numbers around it. It's an act of creation. So happiness actually comes more through that sort of artistic expression, and that's what will bring you joy. And I actually felt, so the reason the question is good is, I felt I had made it at a time that was actually the worst for the company. We were at risk, we were going to go down. And I remember sitting at the Starbucks on the one on 75th Street, there's a Starbucks, the only one with a drive-through, you guys know that, right? And I remember sitting there and thinking, I've got 2 weeks of payroll left. That's all I have, I need to figure this out. But I was not stressed at all. And I think in that moment I knew I found my calling. So thanks for the provocative question, but that's when I knew I'd made it. In another practical sense, you never make it. Because you ever think that way? It's like the Sports Illustrated cover curse. You guys know that? When you end up on the Sports Illustrated cover, you're peaked. They all go downhill after that. What else? And Julie's going to keep us on time, right? Yes, sir.
What are some problems you came across, and like how did you work to solve them?
Be more specific. That's too broad.
Like, say like in your business, what's something that like came up, something that you thought like, say like you weren't getting the right amount of sales, or something came up that might, sink your business, and how did you overcome that situation if that did happen?
So this happens continuously, every day, all the time. Some version of this is happening. An employee that you thought had said yes, then says no. And bad things usually happen around holidays, at least for me. Because that's when everyone has their own thought process and they quit on you when things break down and so on. And you have to actually step back from being too inside your business to, in a sense, being outside your business. And what I mean is, the skill of an entrepreneur is to be able to work in the business and out of the business and be able to move back and forth. And if you think of your business as a machine, right, as a machine that you're building, and you're building it and so on, periodically be able to step back and look at the whole. And that's a great skill to develop. Go into the detail and then go into the 10,000-foot view of the business. But problems happen all the time. And you've got to make game time calls, and you have to make the calls quick. And you cannot beat yourself up too much either about getting something wrong, or your colleagues. Right? This is your, if you guys like sports, I play a lot of competitive sport, mostly racket sports and so on. You hit a bad shot, move on, right? Learn what you can from it. Don't beat up anybody, and you move on. You'll make tons of mistakes. You'll be close to running out of money. They'll be like, excuse my language, but they'll be, oh shit, moments of the product, right? Where you built out the product in a direction and the problem shifted on you. And you're looking at this and saying, I've just spent 2 release cycles of coding on a thing that nobody wants. All of those things are going to happen. You as a company get good. You will get better at reading the tea leaves, reading the signals. The one last thing I'll say on that is, there's this thing we call having happy years, where you end up in a state where you just really need something good to happen, and so your years start to filter out the bad news. That's a bad place to be. And just don't develop happy years. Just be realistic. Right? When you look at the environment or your customers or your employees, don't just look for the things that someone is telling you. Look for what is not being said. All the truth of these things is often in the thing that is not being said. Like if you're sitting with, this is probably a good human thing in any case, but if you're sitting with a customer who says, great, I love your product, I just don't have any budget now, but next quarter, absolutely. What did we just hear? I heard a guy saying, I like you as a person, I don't want to hurt your feelings here, I'm never going to buy from you. But I want the problem by 1 quarter. The happy years person says, awesome, we're 1 quarter away, let me book this thing. But that's a skill you can only develop with experience. What else? Anything from the peanut gallery here? Go ahead.
When your product came out in the early stages, how did you market it?
Like, how'd you get the word out?
How do you get the word out? So that's a very good question. Actually, the vehicles tend to be different depending on what you're selling. When you're selling to a business, you have to ask yourself, whose opinion do they care about, right? And in that case, print advertising or other advertising is not going to be effective. They care about their peers, meaning other firms. So referrals from customers you have are very high. That's how you market case studies, video testimonials. And then you have industry experts, so the analysts, etc. People in the media, people in the trades, whatever the trades are. They will write about these things, and that's how you get the word out. And I would do it that way. If you're a consumer brand, you might do it differently. My experience isn't from the consumer brand side, so I'll keep that away. But one of your tasks as a founder is to figure out what messaging your buyer actually cares about, and then make that happen. What else? Yes?
How did you decide on like a location? Like that this is my office, this is where I want to start out?
You do it where you are. How did you decide on, being in Naperville? You were born here, right?
I moved.
You moved. The secret of companies is that they generally tend to begin wherever you are, wherever the person is. Field Glass began off of a tiny office park off of Deal Road. You guys know the street called Park Street? You actually know that street? The street called Park Street. It's about a half a mile up on Deal Road West. I don't think if you don't know it, I could barely find it myself even now. But I got a little space there, and you never get permanent spaces. You get temporary spaces. And what do you need the space for anyway? Most of my best work was done at the Naperville Library private rooms, which are great space, and I get sneak in coffee. And they have Wi-Fi and so on. Or it was done at Starbucks. Like we're looking for a little bit of a community and some ambient noise. Coffee shops have hatched all the pretty business plans there are. So what do you need space for? You need space when you start hiring other people and so on. You just get some reasonable temporary space. Everything is disposable at that stage. But that's the location. So that's kind of a cheeky answer to your question. But as you get bigger, you have to be more thoughtful of where the talent is. Like if you're hiring, lots of techies, at some point the Naperville Tech Corridor will run out of room. Or if you're hiring, say, artists for some business, well then, you have to go to maybe liquor parks or other place. So just think about the considerations of the business. And really it comes down to what problem you're choosing to solve. And based on that, what sort of talent you need to, and then where are they present? Yes?
Every day you woke up, was it like, I'm doing what
Beautiful
I love?
and sunny.
It was like, if you were doing what you love.
No. There were days I hated it. It makes for good speeches when I say the previous thing. No, there are days you're going to hate it. There are days you will hate it. But go ahead with your question. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that was it.
Well, but hold on. Why would it be different? Your range of emotions, or our range of emotions, includes hate for a reason. It's a useful emotion. It tells you what you don't like. It tells you, we are not liking this thing that we're in. Boom. And so, I'm being serious now. You have to be in tune with what you're feeling around your experiences. And this is not a head issue. This is, if anything, this is a body issue, right? Your body will tell you, we don't like what's going on. We don't like what's going on. And you have to listen to it, because then you will correct it. So the days you wake up, and there can't be too many days like that, right? But there will be days you wake up, you're absolutely miserable. And you work too hard, you had too much coffee or whatever, and things are not going well. And let's say you never felt any negative emotion, you never fix it. It's like not feeling pain. Pain is a very useful thing to feel, because then you stop doing the thing that's causing the pain. Good question. Oh, yes. Oh, we're awake. the first space? Almost immediately, actually, because I got within a few months. You mean the first physical space?
Yes.
No, there were no investors. The space was very cheap, by the way. We didn't really need much investment. It was just a few $100s a month, and I had a few $100s a month, so I got it that way. Remember, the investors will only come in after you persuaded them to part with their money. The spaces these days is not going to be an issue for you guys. It was back then, but now there's so many co-working spaces. 1871, where I'm on the board, we now have, I think, 500 companies there. 500 companies. And some of them are no bigger than half this desk. That's all the space they need. And some of those people, they prefer working at night. And so then we can get it at even 1/3 of the price. So you can rent that spot there for $135 a month. You can find that. So, yes, you and then you.
For some of us that are like pursuing a degree in business, what are some like specific things that we can do that would set us up for like a more successful future?
Things you can do in business
And,
during
like,
your
in
studies.
business school. Yeah. That are like unique.
I would, from a school standpoint, just pick up the basic business skills, the blocking and tackling, the basic financial skills. You don't have to go deep into something if you don't want to, but just being able to have a good sense of what a business is and looking at it like like a machine, like a virtual machine. How does it all flow together? Why does it work? What are its threats? So starting to think about a business as something embedded in an environment. For instance, and I'll give you a couple of specific tips that will be useful to me. Think about the threats to a business. Like take any business you like and look at what could hurt that business. Like what other companies from nearby spaces could come in and hurt that business? Or what might you start to compete against that business? So it's a training on how to think. I would actually take, when I was in business school, I would take the Wall Street Journal and look at the long stories on the right and the left. The format's changed on the long story on the right. And I'd actually cover it up with a piece of paper and just read only like 4 or 5 lines. And then try to figure out what was going on. Just from that, like what could be going on. And then reveal a little more and reveal a little more. So it became a little habit that I would do to train myself in looking at options and possibilities. At the undergrad level, and then just figure out like an industry or something that is your passion. Really, that's the biggest thing to do. And if you're coming out of your undergrad, passionate about a few things, try to work in those industries. And otherwise, you'll never understand the problems of an industry unless you've worked in it for a while. And so, the Zuckerbergs are rare, where you can start a business right, you can quit Harvard and start a company. And if something like that does happen, you will know it. You will be waking up at 2 a.m. and able to think of this. Yes, sir.
So you talked a little bit about the 1871 and how it's like a co-working space almost.
Incubator.
Yeah. So what exactly? I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about it?
1871 is a nonprofit incubator that's designed to have entrepreneurs at various stages come and be part of a community. And in that community, there's like 1,000 events that take place. There are lectures. It's an amazing place. Actually, there are coding classes. There are classes for women. There's a program called Wisdom that stands for Women in STEM, where every 2-3 weeks we graduate a cohort of women who are seeking mentors that they can relate to from a female perspective. There's a program called Coding While Black. These are not invented by 1871, but they are hosts to people who want to do these things. So it offers a community, basically. You still have to build your own business, but it's a less lonely experience than what I went through. You're just sitting by yourself at Starbucks. Thank you. Having a picnic with caffeine. What else? Yes, sir.
Do you ever have trouble making tough decisions like that?
All the time. It should be tough. If that ever becomes easy, then under the letter P, look up, or the letter S, look up sociopath. And it should not be easy, ever letting go of someone. Someone has joined you, you know, left their other options, left their job, and now it's not working out. And you should struggle with it. The exceptions are if they have done something wrong, you know, and those happen too, by the way. At that point, you have to be clinical about it. I've had to let people go that it just, you know, you will physically hurt for a while. Because the good people, you've got some of your budgeting or costing wrong. I once had to let 12 people go because we just overhired. It's not their fault, it's our fault. But it has to be done to preserve the health of the rest of the business. But it should be hard. But also you should do it when it's needed. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
So I was thinking about how profitable your company was. Can you give us a little insight on why you decided to sell, when, at what point you decided to sell, and stepping down as president, and what capacity are you working in
You know, the question of why you decided to sell is actually answered the moment you take someone else's money. Because the moment you do that, the pact you made with them is at some point their money will be returned, which really means you're going to sell the business, because that's your real way to return the money, or go public, that's the other option. And so psychologically you prepare yourself better. And the act of bringing in an investor really means we're partners now with our investor. We are now partners in figuring out how to monetize the business. That's really what happens when you take in someone else's money. So then it becomes a question of when, not if. And the when is, you know, there's art, and then there's science, and then there's luck involved in it. And the science of it is, when you decide that I have established myself as a leader now, at the company as a leader in a particular space, and there's enough runway left that it might be quite interesting to a bigger player. That's probably a good time to sell. If your industry is completely tapped out, no one's going to pay for you, because then they won't pay a premium for you. SAP paid a massive premium for us, because my pitch to them was, you know, this is what we've done in spite of you guys trying to kill us in the marketplace. I think what we could do, you know, with you if you're not trying to kill us. And you know, that was a pitch. And then the sale price has nothing to do with your own numbers. The sale price has what they could do with you. It really becomes, you know, what they pay for you, the premium becomes disconnected from who you are. It's a great thing if you can pull it off. And the last thing is that luck. I don't think believer in knowing when you're about to get lucky, when someone willing to pay the big premium. I have no capacity anymore with field glass. One of the things I believe in, so I set up the leadership team, I put them all in place, kept them up, their comp structures ready. And you know, as much as you have to know how to begin things properly, I think you have to know how to end them properly. And you know, when you end, you should move on. And this way you'll always be welcome as a friend and in a different capacity. I've judged tons of chili eating competitions and karaoke contests. I'm always welcome at all the office parties. They put a big book together for me with memories and so on. And but now it's theirs to run, and there's, you know, my life now pivots in a different way. And so my way of impact now is to work with entrepreneurs and other young firms where I want to help them succeed. I think the world's a better place with more entrepreneurs. Sure. There's a question here. Yes.
When you sold your company, did that profit go just like directly to you, or like to a group of people?
Well, it goes to, so good question. The question is, when you sold the company, God bless you, I wish that was the case, but it's not. When you sold the company, where did the profits go? The proceeds, really. So there's, are you guys familiar with the concept of the capitalization table, what we call the cap table? You guys will see it in your business degree. When you start a company, you own 100% of it, right? So let's say you have 100 shares when you start the company. You own all 100 shares. Now you bring in employees. Now you start giving them pieces of the company. That's what they want for the risk that they'll be taking. So let's say we're going to bring in 15 employees and you're giving each a share. You have options and things, but let's set that aside. So now you have 15 employees and now you have 85 shares and they have 15 shares. But now you bring in a financial investor and they say, I'll give you, $200,000 and I think your company is worth $200,000. So at this point now you're giving them half the company, right? They're giving you 200,000, you're worth 200,000. So it's basically 200,000 divided by 400,000 which you give them. So that's half the firm. So you can see how everybody's share starts to reduce. And that's how it should be. This is how you're bringing partners on the journey. The financial journey of a company is really the journey of the capitalization table, the cap table. So you can have a very successful firm, but if you've given up most of it along in this way, then you'll have a great success, but you will not do well personally. So I like this question because it sheds light on something that entrepreneurs don't think about. They're too generous with their stock, they give it up and so on. And sometimes, when you have a long journey and you bring in lots of money, you do have to do that, and that's okay. But that just means you need a very big exit at the other end. For let's say you have 10 remaining shares. If you have a $200 million exit or a $50 million exit, you can do the math on that. If you started with 100, that's how it is. So I appreciate the question. You need to keep the journey of your cap table and the ownership structure in mind as you go through it. That's how it's divided out. Yes, there was a question back there.
For you, was money ever the motivation, or was it never about the money?
It can never be about the money. The reason is that whether or not, I'm not stating a moral position here, I'm saying it's a practical position. It cannot be about the money, because the money is an outcome. It's an outcome of you doing all of these other things right. And you can think about the money as being, but it's not a driver. I mean, it will only ever be the outcome. That said, of course you care about the money. Otherwise you'd be in a non-profit, right? But and then you care about something different. You care about impact. You can have impact in many ways. And entrepreneurship is not limited to the pursuit of capital as a return. Martin Luther King or Gandhi, it was the pursuit of impact as a return, the pursuit of change as a return. So those things are what you want. But you do care about the money. And the reason you should care about the money is because you're asking people for money. And money is the lifeblood of your company. Just like the blood that courses through your veins keeps you alive, it's the cash that courses through a company's veins that keeps it alive. And it should be treated with great respect for that reason. Because once you spend it, it's gone, it's not coming back. And money has a tendency to disappear quickly. As you guys probably know already from your probably relatively empty wallets as high schoolers. Yes, I saw the hand raised. How are we doing on time?
I think we have time for one more question.
One more question.
I don't want nobody wants to ask it.
You guys get a question and Julie gets a question. I see a hand there.
What do you define as failure?
As failure? What do I personally define as failure?
Yeah.
There are many failures. I don't see failure as an event, but I do see it as as a process. So, for instance, let's say you didn't close a sale or your company failed or whatever. Those are actually not failures. A real failure is in either pursuing something in your life that you are not that interested in because your parents said so or your teacher said so. A real failure is in not pursuing, a dream that you have that aligns with your skill. A real failure is not even understanding what's important to you, not discovering your values, not looking inward. Those are the big failures. Let me just tell you, a company failing or a product failing or a customer, those seem like sharp failures in the moment, but they're like surface cuts on your skin that will heal quickly. Those other failures are chronic, and they will last for a long time. But I mean, you guys have all the time and the resources and the mentors and the advice around you that you never have to experience those failures. It's really in not trying. That's a failure. It's not putting yourself out there. I mean, you have one life, right? You're going to be food for worms like the rest of us in a certain number of years. Which is actually comforting if you think of it in an evolutionary sense, but you kind of get back. See, answers to questions you never even asked. Julie, you get the last question?
I don't know if it's going to be as interesting as that, and I love that you supported Shakespeare, so that's exciting too. I just was wondering, you came to a wonderful event this morning. What's happening in the marketplace right now that has you really excited, and why?
Thank you. That's what's happening in the marketplace. So, one of my VC friends said that they expect 1,000 companies to be started in Illinois in 2016. That is unreal. I mean, that is a lot of firms. It's almost like a 1,000 flowers blooming all over the countryside. And many of them, but not all, will be in the Chicago metropolitan area, all these places. To me, that says that there's a community of entrepreneurs and people who work at those shops, people who fund those shops, lawyers who write those contracts, etc. So when you guys, if you ever decide, if you decide to do something, you will have a very supportive ecosystem, here that will create the great firms of tomorrow. And I'm just envious of you all that you're at the start of your journey. Right? I would love to do it all over again, and who knows, I might. And so that's what I'm excited about. And entrepreneurship is also timeless and it's ageless. It literally is ageless. Do you know how old Ray Kroc was when he started McDonald's? Late 50s. And there are others, household names, who are even older. So don't wait that long. But there's no time limit either. In most normal careers, that's when people are getting to close to retirement age. You're hanging it up. That's because you are a part of someone else's story, and they tell you you retire at whatever, 62 or 65. But if you're an entrepreneur, nobody tells you when to retire. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Hope this was slightly interesting.